Greetings, sisters and brothers. This is Milton Alimadi. So today I want to speak on two African dictators in particular. Paul Biya of Cameroon, who's been the country's dictator since 1982, and General Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, who's been dictator since 1986. So Paul Biya has been destroying Cameroon for 43 years now, and General Museveni for 39 years now, going on to 40 years next year. So we are trying to create a United States of Africa, hopefully in the near future. We want a borderless Africa. We want an Africa with a modern economy. We want Africa to industrialize. We want Africa to be able to use its resources to build wealth and prosperity in Africa. Sisters and brothers, I guarantee you we will never be able to accomplish these goals when we have one individual and his family in power for 4 decades. Not possible. Especially when it's not a modernizing, dynamic individual. Museveni and Paul Biya. We're not talking about a Lee Kuan Yew, right? These are basically kleptocrats. Kleptocrats, useless dictators who are not modernizing, who are not industrializing, just stealing from the national treasury and from the country's, respective countries' resources. And each of them have announced that they're going to run in upcoming elections in their respective countries. In Uganda, early 2026. In Cameroon, October 2025. Sisters and brothers, I normally make these types of presentations in a semi-detached manner. But when it comes to Cameroon and Uganda and these two dictators, I make no bones about it. I am absolutely 100% not impartial. I believe in what the late Walter Rodney used to say. He was a big advocate of praxis, right? You go beyond just theorizing and intellectualizing, but you match it with action that needs to be executed on the ground. As Pan-Africans, each one of us must be engaged in removing a person like Paul Biya from continuing to destroy Cameroon. Should not be allowed to continue as president. We have to engage in struggle with sisters and brothers in Cameroon, whether the ones in diaspora, when they organize protest, we must collectively join in those protests. Because what Paul Biya does in terms of destroying Cameroon affects the entire African continent. It affects immediately Cameroon itself and the neighboring countries, number one. But number two, it also incentivizes other African misrulers that if one guy can stay there for 42, 43 years, why can't I do the same? So Cameroon's struggle is a struggle of every right-minded African, especially Pan-Africans. So I'm with Cameroon on this struggle. If they have protests in diaspora, whether it's digital, whether it's active in person, I will join them in solidarity. And I strongly suggest other Africans do the same. When we succeed in Cameroon, we succeed for the entire African continent and Africa's future. If we work together with Cameroonians on the ground in Cameroon, look up the opposition groups, look at their websites, see how you can get in touch with them. And you in the diaspora, see how you can engage with them and help them. One culprit we can organize protests against is Total Energies, which operates in Cameroon, in Uganda, and in other African countries, like Mozambique, for example. So we join in protest against Total as well. Wherever they have offices in diaspora where we are located, we join in protest in front of those offices. We join in digital protests. Digital protests, very effective. Get images of the atrocities that are being committed in the ongoing war in Cameroon. Attach those images. If you're going to use social media like X, make sure you tag the CEO of Total, Patrick Pouyanné. I think the last name is spelled Pouyane. Look up his Twitter handle. Make sure he gets all those images. Look up the members who are on the board of directors of Total. Make sure you tag all of them as well. Whether it's going to be on X, whether it's on IG, whether it's on Facebook, join the protest with Cameroonian sisters and brothers. The same thing with Uganda. Get the images of the atrocities. What are some of the ongoing atrocities in Uganda? Kidnapping of people that are suspected to be members or have allegiance to the major opposition parties, particularly the National Unity Platform, NUP. That is a party that is led by the young Ugandan politician, activist, entertainer, Bobby Wine, of course. His real name is actually Robert Kyagulanyi, but he's better known by his stage name, Bobby Wine. And for many of you who remember, he was the subject of that major documentary that was nominated for an Oscar. The People's President, the man and the movement, Bobby Wine. And that, I think the full documentary is now available on YouTube. So watch that, share it with others. But also the same thing for the Ugandan struggle, as I said, with respect to Cameroon. Where Ugandans are located in diaspora, whether it's the US, UK, other European countries, other African countries, whenever they organize resistance in front of embassies, in front of offices of Total Energies, join them. Because in that situation, you have a man who, come January, would have been in office for 40 years, has completely destroyed all the institutions, right? Remember how Mobutu, the late Mobutu, the Congolese dictator, used to say, "I am the state." It's the same thing in Uganda. This useless African, Yoweri Museveni, is the state in Uganda. He is the judiciary, he is the executive, and he is the legislature as well. We can't have that. So Uganda's struggle, the struggle of Ugandans, is a Pan-African struggle. If we succeed in removing a dictator like Museveni from power, we are also actually enhancing the entire African struggle for liberation and for the creation of a borderless, industrialized Africa. That can never be accomplished with a person like Museveni in power in Uganda, with his vice military dictator, his son, General Muhoozi. Let me say a few words about General Muhoozi. And some of you may disagree with my own analysis, but I have confidence that this analysis is correct. Muhoozi is notorious for tweeting outrageous statements. The most recent outrageous statement that got global coverage in media was when he boasted that he was torturing Eddie Mutwe, who is the chief security leader of security personnel for Bobby Wine. And he posted an image of Eddie Mutwe, sweating, bruises, wounds, semi-naked, and said, yes, he's in my basement and I'm torturing him. And it got global coverage, which is good because it exposes the real brutality and the crude viciousness of this evil regime of General Museveni and his son, General Muhoozi. But in terms of the tweets themselves, a lot of people say Muhoozi is crazy. I agree. He's crazy, but he's not as crazy as he makes himself appear to be crazy, right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, he's not a 10 crazy or plus 10. No, he's not. He could be a 7 or 8 crazy, even though he makes himself appear to be a 10 plus crazy. These tweets are coordinated. I believe these tweets do not originate from Muhoozi's brain. He does not seem to be capable or have that capacity. I think these tweets come from the senior dictator himself, General Museveni. Now, why would I say this? And how would it make sense that Museveni would allow, first of all, obviously, Museveni is allowing Muhoozi to make those tweets if he's not scripting it himself. Because if he was not allowing him to do it, Muhoozi would not remain commander of Uganda's army. Think about that. Pure and simple. The father would have removed him as vice military dictator by now. So he either tolerates it, and in my case, I believe Museveni himself scripts those tweets that Muhoozi then goes ahead and tweet. Now let me answer the part about why would Museveni do something like that? Because Ugandans and the international community would then say, wait a minute, look at this crazy son. He's a madman. He can never be president of Uganda. So in fact, Museveni, this dictator of 40 years, is preferable to Muhoozi. You see? Museveni thinks he's very clever. But many times I'm saying he's not as clever as he thinks he really is. I feel that I am capable of reading Museveni's mind. He's very predictable. Because why? I'm not saying because I'm a particular genius or something. No. I'm saying he has been there for such a long time that he keeps playing the same script over and over and over again. So when you analyze it carefully, you're capable of understanding how his mind operates. So everybody's saying, oh, no, Muhoozi is crazy. Look at what he's doing. Anybody that can boast of torturing Eddie Mutwe, can you imagine him running a country? No. I would rather have Museveni, right? You see this nonsense? Museveni is a master in propaganda and misleading, right? But I am also a student of journalism and media. That's what I went to school for, in addition to, studying economics. I mean, of course, now I'm doing my PhD in history at Harvard University. But my background involves a lot of journalism and media, right? And when you do journalism and media, you understand how propaganda operates as well. So this nonsense about Muhoozi being crazy, yes, but not a 10 crazy, maybe an 8 crazy. The rest of it is coordinated with his father. So when you look at the tweets, then you say, oh, Museveni is preferable. How can Museveni be preferable? This is the guy who has committed multiple massacres in every region in Uganda, in Central, in the West, in the East, and in the northern part of Uganda. And he's taken this same militarism to neighboring countries. Museveni's bloody fingerprints are everywhere in East Africa, in Rwanda. Had Uganda not sponsored the 1990 invasion of Rwanda from Uganda, the 1994 genocide never would have occurred, right? So if 1 million plus people were killed in Rwanda, the origin is the 1990 invasion. So Museveni's blood prints all over there. Multiple invasions of Congo, as I discussed in one of my previous commentaries. Multiple invasions together with Rwanda. Invading Congo, stealing resources with tens of billions of dollars through the last 30 years now, in the process causing the deaths of an estimated 7 million Congolese. Invaded South Sudan, now the nation of South Sudan now, right? Invaded because they wanted to install in power his puppet, President Salva Kiir, because he fears that Riek Machar might provide a safe haven to people who are opposed to his dictatorship in Uganda. He will do anything to make sure that Riek Machar never becomes the leader of South Sudan. Riek Machar is now under detention in South Sudan. You think this is coming from Salva Kiir? Of course not. Salva Kiir is a puppet and Museveni is the puppet master. That is why Riek Machar is now under detention, because he fears going into the election season in early 2026, everybody that presents a potential threat to instigate a mass popular uprising against his dictatorship, he wants them detained. That is why Dr. Kizza Besigye is also detained in Uganda. That is why Eddie Mutwe detained. He's not going to be released until after Museveni rigs the next election, which, as Pan-Africans, I'm saying we must not allow. The young people, of course, he's going to rig the election, steal the election. His illegitimacy must not be condoned or recognized by any entity. And we'll do our best in diaspora to engage actively with all these countries that have been sustaining him for years. Institutions like the World Bank and the IMF will escalate our protests. The World Bank, as you know, very treacherously, just a few weeks ago, announced that it's going to resume engaging with Uganda and giving new loans. Just when the regime is very vulnerable, the World Bank comes to bail out this dictatorship, right? So, sisters and brothers, Africa has great potential. Sadly, because of misrulers like Museveni, Paul Biya, Africa's resources are being used to build wealth and prosperity outside Africa. So it's our duty to work with the young generation of African leaders to make sure that we do not allow misrulers, dictators like Paul Biya to continue ruining Cameroon and the rest of Africa, or Museveni ruining Uganda and indirectly the rest of Africa as well. So those are the comments that I wanted to make tonight. I want to also offer my email address, because sisters and brothers in Cameroon, if I can be of any help in terms of engaging with you in your resistance, I want to be a part of it. So my email is mallimadi@gmail.com. That's mallimadi@gmail.com. And Cameroon is a very sad case because, and many of you may not know this, and I want you to do your research and look up the history. Look up the name Felix Moumie, Moumie, a great Cameroonian nationalist and Pan-African, the caliber of Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, Modibo Keita, Sékou Touré, of that caliber and that generation, you know, brutally assassinated, poisoned by the French. Cameroon's history would have been very different had Felix Moumie not been assassinated. We would not have a so-called ruler who lives in Switzerland. So there's a Wall Street Journal article a couple of years ago, and it said Paul Biya and his entourage rent entire floors of a 5-star hotel in Zurich, in Switzerland. And that's where he lives, supposedly running the country from Switzerland. And what actually sparked the story was very interesting. There was and you see the power of protest? One individual would protest in front of that hotel every day. So eventually, the Wall Street Journal reporter asked you, why are you here? Why are you always protesting? And he explained that my so-called president lives in this hotel. And he did a big story exposing the corruption of Paul Biya's regime. So never underestimate the power of protest, particularly when we engage collectively together as Pan-Africans. A luta continua, we will liberate our continent, and eventually we will have a borderless Africa.